In the days of old, the ancients looked to the stars for the answers to the mysteries of life. Today, we can still look to the stars for the answers to the mysteries of life. I'm Bob Hickman, and I hope that you'll join me each day at my website for your free daily horoscopes. Hey, TVs, this is Psychic Bob. It is so awesome to be back with you. Well, I'm sitting here today, I'm just contemplating my mystical, all-seeing eye charm. Isn't that beautiful? It's got little crystals that form the eye and the big blue eyeball in the center. This is a wonderful, powerful protection charm. And I've talked about the eye before, but it's always something that I enjoy. And I thought tomorrow on Friday we'd revisit this subject about the mystical power of the all-seeing eye and its charm, and I'd show you some of my charms and talk about that. So make sure to be here tomorrow. We're going to talk about the all-seeing eye on Friday. Well, first of all, before we get into today's video, I want to also say thank you to all of you who came out to yesterday's video, which was on horoscopes for June 2016. So if you haven't seen that video, it's right in the queue, right before this one. I cover all 12 zodiac signs, and it's my little snapshot overview of the month, so you can see what's coming for you through the month of June this year. So make sure if you haven't seen that, go see that video. Again, it's right before this one, okay? Well, that brings us to today, which is Thursday, which is Zodiac Thursday. And, I love Zodiac Thursday. You guys write me a lot of letters asking about astrology, and astrology is a passion of mine. I've loved it since I was a kid, and it's always been a kind of a hobby for me. And, I get excited about it. A lot of you have been writing asking about cusps. And you've been saying, Psychic Bob, I think my sign is on the cusp. Which sign am I? Well, you guys have written wonderful questions there. And I think the best way to answer your questions about the cusp is to first of all show what the cusp is. Because a lot of you are going to say, what is he talking about? What is the cusp? Well, let's start with our zodiac wheel. I think a visual representation will help you understand this. Here's our zodiac wheel. This represents the sky, the cosmos above us. And as the sun moves around its orbit through space, it crosses through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So in 1 year, it makes a complete revolution, which is 360 degrees, which is the circle, okay? So in the night sky, all the signs of the zodiac are kind of like a belt that encircle the earth. And as the sun rotates through the year, it crosses through each of these signs. So, for example, let me kind of show this to you here visually. Okay, now I'm an Aquarius, and here's my sign, okay? So I'm right down there. And as an Aquarius, according to the charts, the sun is in the sign of Aquarius from January 20th to February 18th, okay? And so if my birthday, for example, is January 26th, so I fall within those dates. Now, some of you are going to say, Bob, I read your horoscopes. I'm an Aquarius, and I read a different astrologer, and they said that Aquarius actually starts on January 19th, not January 20th. But your listing says it starts on the 20th. So am I a Capricorn or am I an Aquarius? And this is a really good question here, because some people it really causes confusion for. And the answer is not always so simple, because you may have influence of both signs. And generally, people on the cusp actually exhibit tendency towards both signs. So the answer from the kind of a overall perspective is that you are a part Aquarius and part Capricorn. Now, generally what happens is one of those energies tend to dominate. And so it's good for you as you study astrology, read each horoscope for each sign and see which one resonates for you, okay? Now, the reason why the dates are different is because that each year when astrologers calculate the zodiac, they put it together in a book called an ephemeris. And what that does is that plots the charts, the alignments, the transits of the planets. And so when a sun passes through each sign of the zodiac, each house, it's there for approximately 30 degrees. Now remember, we've got 12 signs, so each sign is 30 degrees. You could think of it as a slice of a pie. You cut the angles, and if you cut each angle at a 30-degree angle, you're going to get 12 slices of pie out of your pie. So each pie is 30 degrees, slices angled at 30 degrees. Now, the movement of the sun through those slices of pie, though, sometimes shifts by a day or two, depending on what year we're in. The early astronomers and astrologers discovered that the sun rotates around the zodiac, and that the earth, eventually they discovered that the earth rotates around the sun. But what happens is that every few years, there's a slight adjustment. Like instead of being 365 days in a year, it may be 365 days and 5 minutes. So there's sometimes a slight time fluctuation. And this is why we have leap year. So, we have leap year where we add an extra day onto the month. Instead of February having 28 days, it is 29. Well, that's to make up for the slight adjustments in the movement of the planets and the movement of the sun and the movement of the earth. And that way it keeps everything in balance from a time place. Because if we didn't do that, that little 5 minutes over 100 years would add up to like several days being off, and then all the time and the charts and everything would be off. So what happens is every year astrologers study the movement of the sun. So when we take into account leap year and slight variations, that creates whether the sun is in one day crossing over into the next sign. And so when you're a cusp sign, sometimes that indicates that the sun is sitting right on that border. So like we had Capricorn and Aquarius. So like one year, the sun is in Aquarius and it moves over into Capricorn on the 20th of January. But another year, because we have a leap year, that throws things off by a day, and it might move over on the 21st or the 19th. So it can fluctuate. So now you're going to say, well, gee, since all these astrologers are using different days, how do I know which sign I am? Well, let me show you something here. This is a situation that I ran into recently with my mother. I was putting together her horoscope. And my mother is a Sagittarius, okay? And she was born in 1934. Now, this book that I have has the ephemeris for November 1934, okay? And there's an ephemeris. It charts all the major planets across the top here. And then it goes, each planet, its degrees, and how it moves around the zodiac. So when we look at November 1934, we see the sun. The first column here is the sun. And if we follow down the sun to my mother's birth date, which was actually, she identifies her birthday as November 22nd, okay? Now, according to the horoscope listings that I use, November 22nd makes her a Sagittarius. But the truth is, you really, if you want to get specific for cusp signs, you have to look individually year by year. So actually on November 22nd, 1934, the sun was actually at 29 degrees Scorpio. It had not crossed the 30-degree mark into Sagittarius. So technically, my mother, who is a cusp Sagittarius, honestly, she doesn't know this. I haven't been able to tell her yet. She's actually a Scorpio. Now, this would break my mother's heart because she's identified as a Sagittarius. Her whole identity is wrapped up in being Sagittarius. She even wears Sagittarius jewelry. You can imagine my horror when I sat down and did her chart and realized that she's actually a Scorpio. She believes she's a Sagittarius. And honestly, it doesn't so much matter because that's what she feels like. And I let her be a Sagittarius. But from a true astrological perspective, she's a cusp sign and actually a Scorpio. So now listen, don't panic because some of you are going to say, oh my God, Bob, I'm a cusp. Am I not really what I've identified? First of all, let me say calm down. You are what you want to be. When you're a cusp sign, you might read your horoscope every day and you might say, none of this ever resonates with me. In that case, you want to look at the sign next to you. So if you're on, like my mom, November 22nd, you might want to also read Scorpio and Sagittarius. So read both signs because then you'll get a sense of which one resonates with you. But don't be panicked because the truth is it's not always a hard and fast line. Now, technically on paper, yes, we say, oh, they're not at 30 degrees. You know, like my mom, she's at 29 degrees. That means she is still a Scorpio. Technically on paper, that's true. But when we talk about the zodiac, we have to think of it as lights. It's not an issue is the light on or is the light off. You could think of it as having two spotlights. And as one starts to dim, for example, leaving one sign and then entering the other light of the new sign starts to brighten. We have a point, though, where the two lights are both giving light, some a little brighter, some a little dimmer. And so as you move through that zodiac wheel, again, try to understand that the energies are, in flux. So don't always look at it, it's a hard line. Yes, on paper, it is a hard line. So from a paper perspective, my mother is not a Sagittarius, she's a Scorpio. But in her heart and the way she expresses herself, she does carry a lot of those Sagittarian vibrations. And so she can identify as a Sagittarius. So if you're, somebody's on the cusp and you look up the ephemeris and find out that you're not the sign that you always thought you were, don't panic. You don't have to change your sign unless you really want to. And you want to say if my mom said, wow, I really feel that, that Scorpio is who I really am now that I understand that, and she wants to start calling herself a Scorpio, that's absolutely fine, okay? But if you like being your sign and you don't want to change it, you don't have to, okay? So be as you are, enjoy your astrology sign. But for those of you on the cusp, I would say consider looking at it that you want to read both horoscopes for a while and see maybe you really are more of a Scorpio rather than a Sagittarius. Or maybe you are a Capricorn rather than an Aquarius. I get people that come to me with this panic. Many times they come and they said, oh my God, Bob, I grew up as an Aquarius. I went to see an astrologer and I found out that now I'm a Capricorn. Or they say, I found out I'm a Pisces. And they get in a panic. And I like to say it's not hard and fast in reality. Yes, on paper, we can say, okay, it's this degrees. But in reality, think about how you work with that energy and claim that for yourself. So if you look up an ephemeris and find out today that you're not an Aquarius, that you're a Capricorn, or that you're not a Sagittarius and that you're a Scorpio, don't panic. Just start studying the other sign and see where your energies lie, because the lines are only markers. They're not eternal facts and rules to dominate and control. As I've always said, the stars are not meant to compel and control us. They are simply given as guideposts to enlighten us on our journey. Okay. Anyways, I hope I didn't lose you. It's kind of complex in some elements of astrology, but that's my take on cusps. And I'd love to hear from all of you. Are any of you out there a cusp sign? And if so, tell me about it in the box below. Or maybe you know somebody who's a cusp sign. And what do you think about that? Do you see them as one sign or the other? I'd love to hear about that. Anyways, guys, I'm so glad you're here. Listen, keep it here at Spiritual. We got more coming. Tomorrow, we are going to have a talk about the mystical all-seeing eye, sometimes called the evil eye, but it's not really evil. But I'll explain that more tomorrow. Anyways, I'm glad you're here. Listen, like this favorite, hit subscribe up there in the corner. Be part of Spiritual. We'd love you to be here because we have a lot of stuff going on. We're going to have some amazing videos throughout the weekend. We're going to talk more about some UFO stuff. So, we got a lot to work on here. And we're going to have some more Wiccan stuff this weekend. So a lot of mystical things happening. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you've enjoyed this. And of course, next week we'll have another Zodiac Thursday.